Please look at this definition of water quality or water pollution. There is one word associated with this with reference to its particular use. That is very important. Important in the sense the same water may be suitable for one purpose and may not be suitable for a different purpose. The same water with a given water quality criteria or standards, when used for drinking, is not suitable. But when used for bathing or cleaning or navigation, it is suitable. That's why whenever you are asked a question, what do you understand by water pollution? You must always try to ask a question to yourself, to what use the water is going to be taken to. If it is drinking water quality, that's a different standard. If it is a question of river ecology, river conservation, or industrial effluent discharge, then it has got a different standard. That's what I mean by to what particular use it has been taken to. And my focus today will be on water pollution in relation to drinking. That's why I'm not going to bring my findings related to high altitude lakes. My experience is working on high altitude lakes and river in general. I haven't taken any slide from any other textbook. These are all my own findings. Now we have a habit of reading textbook and we don't really are involved in generating knowledge by ourselves. Now it is high time that we should always try to generate knowledge by ourselves. Enough is enough. We have read enough textbook. Now let us try to develop a habit of writing textbook in our context, in Nepalese context. Do you have a single book written on water pollution in Nepalese context? No. You must have heard of series of research articles being published on Bagmati River. But if you had to go to a library and find a compendium on water quality on Bagmati River system, do you find a one? No. So this is high time that we compile the results, or if possible, let us try to generate the knowledge by ourselves. You will come across few slides where I try to bring my own findings, almost all the slides. To what use do we take water to in Nepalese context? Mostly domestic water supply and sanitation. You must have come across by Dr. Sudan Panthi. He is pioneer in this area. Has he already given his talk?
Yes.
Yes. So you must have listened to him. So far as access to water is concerned, access to piped water supply, I think we have reached to 84–85%. That's what the data says. In certain cases, you might also come across 90, 91, but I believe it's 84–85% of Nepalese, they have access to piped drinking water supply. That's fine. And when it comes to total sanitation, it's about very close to 97%. We are nearly reaching absolute total sanitation. That's what the data says. But if you talk in terms of how many of the water supply systems are functional, about 22 to 25%, let's say 22.5 or 25% are only in functional state. If they are not in functional state, what is happening with the rest of the system? We are bound to drink contaminated water. Okay. Though we have an access to piped water supply system, but access to safe drinking water is lacking. And there is law that clearly says that if you have not been given an access to safe drinking water or potable drinking water, you can file case directly to the Supreme Court, considering the criteria and standard that has been made public by the Department of Water Supply and Sewerage. Okay, that's what the statement is. So far as irrigation is concerned, how many land is irrigated, there exists a data, and data is available only for a specific irrigation scheme, not in general. So I am trying to escape that. With regard to hydroelectric power, of the available water resources, how much water is being used in hydroelectric, that is, the data is available. And there are other economic uses to which water has been accounted for, like large-scale industrial cooling. You may wonder, more than the water which we use for drinking, the water has been used in industry for cooling purpose. If we can invent a cooling agent that can cool the industries in the process, that water can be used for drinking purpose. You know, water has no substitute. We cannot invent water. Water is the only natural resource that has got no replacement. If there is no soil, there are technologies by which you can grow rice on it. There are technologies that has already been exhibited in many different places. But water has got no substitute. The only way to recover water is the water that is dying, we'll have to restore that. Furthermore, we use water for recreation, tourism, commercial fishing, navigation, and there are protected aquatic habitat for recreation purposes or for ecological restoration purposes. We use water for cultural and religious uses. You must have come across one terminology called e-flow. How much water should flow in a certain river, the environmental flow. Now that has to be determined for every river system. And when we determine environmental flow, we have to be careful about its religious and cultural use. For instance, how much water should be flowing in Devghat? How much water should be flowing in Devghat? That is very much determined by how much water is needed when there are some religious or rituals. At least people can take a holiday. You cannot reach the water lower than that. For instance, there are a lot of sand and gravel extraction going on from river, and river has been used. I would rather call this as misuse as a source for construction materials, sand and gravel extraction. There should have been some other alternative to this. And there are some unique water usage also, so bottling of water. Now, bottling water has become very commercial in Nepal now. You will find that there are several spring water which have been kept and bottled and exported. Okay, so these are the different uses. And if you look at these pie charts here, that clearly gives you an indication. Look at the one to the top in that light yellow. In Nepal, about 96% of water is being used for agriculture, and then 1% in industry and 3% for domestic purpose. Whereas in the United States, 65% is used in industry, 27% in agriculture, and then for domestic purpose, 8%. That gives you a clear indication why our major income is still agriculture. Agriculture has been our main. Whereas United States, their major income is industries, and they have been using water for industrial purpose. Now, which are the major stressors in Nepal when it comes to river? Look at all these pictures, and that gives you an indication. Sewage discharge and waste dumping has been identified as one of the major stressors that causes water pollution in Nepal. If we can stop this, or at least we can ensure a well-treated sewage being discharged into rivers, then major problem of water pollution will be resolved. So one of the major problems is sewage discharge. Next is sand and gravel extraction. Third is vehicle washing or vehicle crossing. Rafting and navigation also to a certain extent, not to a large extent, but to a certain extent. Damming, yes, and bathing and washing, yes. We have identified about from 40 to 42 stressors or pressures or drivers that are causing pollution of rivers. Of those, these are the main ones. You will get to know the quantified figure also here. We had an exercise done considering Bagmati river system, how many different stressors are there in Bagmati river system. And we could end up with 21 different varieties of stressors. Okay? And of these 21 different, these 21 different varieties of stressors were categorized into 6 major headings. And if you look at the first group A, that contributes 40.3% in total. And this includes agricultural effluents. This is a non-point source of pollution. You would not know from where the pollution is getting into a river. Agricultural effluents, then industrial effluents, then sewerage, then waste dump, and cremation site. So if we can control these in a more environment-friendly manner, then we could have solved 40% of the problem of water pollution, river water pollution. Okay? And following that, we have squatter settlements, water mills, picnic spots, littering by picnic goers, vehicle crossing along river, then military camps, open defecation that contributes 18.8%, and then from bank cutting to reservoir and impoundment that contributes 14%, bathing and washing, and then some kind of other minimal disturbances and storm clearing 8.1 and chain clearing 6.7. So this gives you a feeling now which are the major stressors and where exactly we need to push the button in order to save the rivers from being polluted. This was a case study from Bagmati River, and we have done this for all major river systems. Gadli Kosi, Karnali Mahakali, these are the 4 major river systems, and then other smaller river systems are Kamla, Tinau, Babai, Tapti. The information exists. Having said that, let me draw your attention briefly on facts about water pollution. One major fact is that more than 5 million people die from waterborne diseases each year. Did you ever thought about it? If you can prevent water from being polluted, you can save life of 5 million people. And this figure is more than what you hear who are killed in wars. 10 times the number killed in wars. So the biggest killer in fact is water pollution. Are you aware of waterborne diseases? Diarrhea, dysentery, cholera, and then in Kathmandu, jaundice. These are all waterborne diseases. And until recently, about 32 to 42,000 children under the age of 5, they used to die under the age of 5. So was the case in Bangladesh. But now it has improved dramatically with the improvement in total sanitation and hygiene. That is what we have achieved in our Millennium Development Goal, and we are now heading to a Sustainable Development Goal. This is one biggest killer. And second fact is, if you look at the increase in population over a period of 100 years, the population has doubled. Is not it? But if you look at the use of water over a period of 100 years, it has been multiplied by 6 times. 6-fold increase in the use of water. Because our standard of living is determined by how much water do you use. Per capita, use of water determines our standard of living in modern world. Have you taken your bath this morning? If you say no, when I come to this classroom, do I see something smelling or do I experience something smelling? Standard of living is poor if something is smelling. If it is not smelling, standard of living is high. You have been taking bath every day. So good morning. Yeah. And now agriculture again consumes 70% of the total water yield. So that is also where we need a lot of water. Now third fact is, every day 2 million tons of sewage and industrial and agricultural waste are discharged directly into the world's water. Look at the amount that is being directly discharged into sea. Similarly, like tens of millions of people in Bangladesh, not far from here, they have been exposed to poisonous level of arsenic that you are already aware of. After arsenic investigation in Bangladesh, we also had blanket sampling in Nepal, and there are also some pockets identified in Tarai of Nepal where groundwater is contaminated with arsenic. Arsenic is by nature carcinogenic, and you cannot really do anything against him. The only thing you can control this is not let the land degrade, so that the arsenic which is tied up in soil will not be leached into groundwater. But the development is so rampant that you couldn't really control arsenic from being leached into water system, the groundwater system. Last but not the least, now On 6th of December, I'm keeping my finger crossed, so hopefully this project will be funded. If you look at our atmosphere and consider oxygen, nitrogen, or carbon dioxide in air, of the three given gases, which one is in abundant? Nitrogen is highly abundant. How much percentage? 82.5% or 83% or 70% of it contains nitrogen. And then if you can take this atmospheric nitrogen and then let it settle on soil in wet deposit form, then it can enhance the productivity of the soil. But in the contrary, if the same thing goes to agriculture or as a replacement to fertilizer, you are using inorganic fertilizer and that is washed and then gets into river system, that becomes a major polluting agent to our rivers. Nitrogen can be a polluting agent. It is a polluting agent, as it has been mentioned here. Nitrate from agriculture is the most common chemical contaminant that causes pollution. But the same thing, when used wisely, can also be a source of fertilizer. So the whole air consists of fertilizer. The only thing is that we will have to find a technology by which you can make wet deposit in soil. So rather than adding inorganic fertilizer, you would have got the fertilizer without paying. So that project is being implemented in Edinburgh, in other part of the world. So in Nepal also we are going to begin this soon. How to take the atmospheric ammonia and then convert that into the source of fertilizer, rather than leaving it there as a polluting agent. So these were a few facts about water pollution. Now a little history about what has been done in Nepal with regard to river water quality assessment. It was in 1990 when the present ENFO, they were then called DISVI, they were the one pioneer to initiate river water quality monitoring in Nepal. They started from Bagmati. And then Department of Hydrology and Meteorology, they have got a series of data, chemical data. You can refer to those. Then in Kathmandu University, we have a center called Aquatic Ecology Center from 2005 to 2008. We had an extensive research all over Nepal. During that period, we have included about 600 plus rivers. And then there are some PhD theses you can refer to. Those are exclusively written on water pollution with emphasis on river water quality. And CAPRIMO, there was a tripartite agreement with Kathmandu municipality, and they have also done water quality assessment. Central Department of Environmental Science, TU, there is a proceeding, e-discussion on water for cities. Here also you will find several studies being done on water pollution. And there was Bagmati Action Plan 2009 and 2014. There you will find what are the sources of pollution and how best you can mitigate the source of pollution. If you go through all of these literatures, you will get an overview of what is the water pollution status in Nepal at present. Now briefly let me take you to what is the water quality status in the mid-hills of Nepal with a case study. When you look at this figure, how do we get our water in the rural setup? There is a spring source, we tap the spring source, isn't it? And spring sources are either protected or unprotected. The GMP definition, the UNICEF definition of protected and unprotected water source, the one to the right is considered as protected and the one to the left is considered as unprotected. So what would be the definition of protected water source? Protected water source means the one which has got a fence. You see a fence, and the water is kept right at the source before it comes to the soil, and then it is properly stored in an intake with the lid closed. The one to the left is not so. The water source is a spring that is already over lane flow runoff, and that runoff is kept at different places. So that will definitely be contaminated by fecal contamination. But the one to the right is supposed to be not contaminated. That is the definition of protected and unprotected. Now let us see the findings. We had a case study in Jiri municipality for 14 months, very extensive. And as you see there in Jiri municipality, all those points are the one in green are protected sources and the one in red are unprotected sources. Protected sources will definitely be less in number compared to unprotected sources. So majority, about 67% of the sources which we have assessed, they were unprotected. So now you can generalize. In the middle of Nepal, 67 to 70% of the spring sources are unprotected. The first challenge for us is how to protect them. It's very simple. Barbed wire, clothes, lead. If you can do that, you can avoid contamination. And in Jiri municipality alone, there were 97 sources identified, the water sources. And then the sources which we have assessed, they would serve about 2,709 households. This many number of households were served, means about 79% of the household. And if you look at this line diagram, the graph, it has also been explained to the left. A total of 68.3%. Our sampling unit were 5,660 in total, the sample which we have analyzed. Total 68.3% of household at point of use, drinking water were contaminated. Let us be clear here. On one hand there is a source, and on the other hand there is point of use. Source is where we build an intake and then distribute the water through pipe supply system to the household. And point of use is right, the way I am holding my microphone, point of use is the place from where you drink the water. Water may be protected, may be safe at source, but it is not necessarily uncontaminated when it comes to your mouth. Your habit, your personal hygiene may affect a lot. You know, there was a hypothesis as to the under 5 child morbidity or mortality is very high in Nepal. What could be the reason for that? One reason, the water quality is bad. That is causing morbidity or mortality, one reason. And then the contamination of water could be from the source, or it was safe at source, but the mother who is taking care of child, her hygiene and sanitation is so poor that she is responsible for contaminating the water. On the other hand, she is responsible for morbidity or mortality of the child. So this, based on that hypothesis, this research was carried out. You can understand 68.3% of the household, at point of use, they drink E. coli contaminated water. And in Jiri municipality, if you compare in which time of the year the water is most contaminated. In winter, in Jiri municipality, water is safe in winter. But in spring, it is contaminated. Now you can ask question, what makes water safe during winter? The reason is very interesting. During winter, Jiri municipality is cold and they make sure that they boil the water. They cannot drink cold water. That's why, to make sure that you drink warm water, they boil the water, and then boiling the water can prevent the E. coli contamination from as high as 68%, it can bring down to 38%. Rainy season is high, you can understand in rainy season there is open defecation and that brings E. coli to the water sources. If the water sources itself is contaminated, no way that you can be free from contamination unless you have some household mechanism to treat that. As simple as that. I hope you are following. Huh? Now I am coming to an end. If it is boring, you can raise a hand and I'll stop. And then this may be a representative bar diagram for whole of mid-hills of Nepal. I cannot say that now. This you can use as a case from Jiri and then replicate in similar ecoregions. Okay? And we have chosen 97 water sources and we try to grade them. 42.30% of them were at very high risk, 42%, just imagine. And then 10.3% were at low risk when it comes to risk assessment based on contamination. At point of view. Now I'll come to my field. This is the message I wanted to convey you. Please remind me of time, okay? About biological monitoring. I don't know how many of you are familiar about this. If you don't have a lab, you really won't have a lab. We have not been able to establish a good lab in this country, I'm sorry to say that. We don't have a good lab for physiochemical analysis of water samples. Then at least you have a tool. With this tool, you can survive rest of your life. This is biomonitoring. What you need to do is you simply need to be familiar with these insects. If you are familiar with these insects, then you can categorize the river water quality. Look at blue color, that is good river quality, and the insects of the type you find is given to the right, okay? And then the one to the red is highly contaminated. And the overall theory here is, what is your assumption? Will the species richness increase or decrease with pollution? The biodiversity, species richness, will that increase or decrease? What is your observation? Increase. Increase. That was wrong. Decreases. If the biodiversity is low, then contamination is high. If the water is polluted, then biodiversity will be low in rivers. Okay? That must be substrate. What about abundance? Number of individuals per unit area, abundance will increase or decrease with pollution? You go to Bagmati river, go further downstream. If it is highly polluted, you turn the story, you will find extremely high number of highly tolerant indicator species. Okay. What about sensitive species? And then tolerant species? Yes. So this is the theory. Okay. If this is the theory, then let us look at these insects. There are certain group of insects. You categorize the river water into 5 different categories. 1 is good, 5 is bad. Okay. And then the one to the right, the flat one, this is found in between 1 to 2. You turn the stone, if you find in abundance this insect, then you can classify the river as category 1 to 2. And category 1 is suitable for drinking, for local people. For outsiders, they have to do some household treatment. So this is the whole theory, the message I wanted to convey you. Now, there are centers who are willing to train you to identify these insects. If you are interested to identify them and use them as indicator species. Now similarly, look at these Plecoptera. These are called stonefly nymphs. And then they are almost always found between 1 to 2. You will never ever find them in 3. Okay? So you can, if you find them, you can immediately say that the river quality is 1 or 2. And in order to understand, the other way around would have been to take the water sample all the way to laboratory, do the analysis, work day and night. That situation won't arise here. But you need to know. And look at some other Trichoptera. They are also always found between 1 to 2, never in 3, 4, and 5. This sensitive Trichoptera. There are some other, you are already familiar with this mollusca. But you shouldn't be looking for mollusca in higher altitude. They are restricted to some ecoregions. You will not find everywhere. They are rolling species. And see, where are they available? They are found always between 3 to 5. They are never ever found between 1 to 2. So if you find a mollusca, then you can understand that this water is not suitable for drinking. If you are fond of trekking, you go, turn the stone, look at these indicator species, and you make an assumption. See, these are again different type of mollusca. Gastropods and bivalves, they are 2 different categories. And they are found always between 3 to 4. I'm not going to name them because once I name them, at present you may lose interest. Names might be, but they are Latin names, they are difficult. But with time, when you are used to, then the names become quite familiar. Look at these bivalves. You will find a large number of these at the outlet of Lake Fewa. Large number of these. And you will find a large number of these in most of the rivers with origin in Surin. And they are always between, they cannot be 5. You will never ever find them in 5. They could be between 1 until the mid of 4, the category classes. Once again I repeat, 4 mean heavily polluted, 1 mean no pollution. Now this is also, they are, it is called Bellamia bengalensis, you will find them in Rapti a lot. They are exclusive indicator of water quality at 3 to 4. Very specific. Neither above nor below. So they could also be so sensitive to certain category of water quality. And you are already familiar about these insects larvae. They are highly tolerant. They are found in heavily polluted part of the stream. These red midges. And these are dragonfly nymphs. They are found between 3 to 4. And these are bugs. They are found always between 2 to 3. And this color coding, they are standard color coding. Based on this, now what you can do is you can develop a water quality map for the river system where you are working. This was a water quality map ever produced in Nepal in 1996 for Bagmati River in Kathmandu Valley. You see the ring road, and then if it is red, then as per WHO standard, people living along 500 meters periphery, they can never ever live a healthy life because the water is already contaminated. Okay? And this is what we did it. Some of my students, they did it in Godavari River with yellow and blue. Blue is drinkable. And you could also do a comparative study. This is what some of the students did in Khimti. In 2005, that was the river water quality, and by 2008, now you can see whether the water has improved or not. There was no yellow earlier, but now yellow is there. There was no blue earlier, but now there is blue. So the headwater quality has improved. So the watershed management practices have been effective. But downstream, it has not improved. It has degraded, the water quality. I'm close to my timing. And now, this is the conclusion. Koshi, Gandaki, Karnali, Mahakali, Bagmati, Tinau, Rapti, and Babai. 315. Now the number has gone up to 700. I have not been able to add the findings of other rivers. Okay, but if you look at these 315 sites, which river in Nepal you may consider is near to pristine? You cannot find any river pristine. But there are at least river Gandaki, you see the blue bar is still existing. Okay, but in other cases the blue bar is very lower down, and then the river quality has extremely degraded in Bagmati River, but in other river system you will not find the river quality 4. The heavily polluted situation does not exist yet, at least in the site which I have investigated so far, considering sampling size is 315. What is the way forward then? The way forward would be students of your age and with your energy, your mission, now must focus. We need at least, I would rather say, 5,000-6,000 students who are trained on this tool. We want to send them to all the different provinces and then involve them in river quality monitoring and prepare a water quality map for the whole drainage basin of this country. There are funding agencies who are willing to pay, but they are repeatedly asking one question: do you have manpower available who can do this work within a year, all over Nepal, and then prepare a water quality map that will be a very good policy document for the politician to read. They don't have time to go through all the pages. But if you can provide them maps with colors, they will immediately ask, why here there is red? Convert this to green or yellow. Then that is enough for us. Then they will support us. So now it's high time for us to find which are the reference river. Reference river means the rivers which are the quality is not degraded. We have to document now, else the second generation will not see a river. How a river in its natural state would look like. I have seen a natural river. Sir, you have also seen a natural river. We have seen a natural river. But I don't think your generation will, or at least the next generation will see a natural river. Maybe we'll have to bring them to a tunnel and say, this is the river. Yeah? And then the next thing we need to do is identify these stressors and categorize them into physical, chemical, and biological, or which physical, chemical, and biological indicator would be adequate to address this issue. Third would be, we have to establish a reference laboratory in this country where we can develop a national water quality database of rivers. We don't have any so far. And then we have to now start developing a consortium, a roster of available trained local human resources. Having said that, I would like to thank you. And then if my time is, I still have 5 minutes left. Yes, that's a good timing. Thank you.